Welcome back. And as we mentioned earlier in the show, our first part of our conversation is going to be looking at the history of Baron Bliss. And we have joining us at this time Captain Nicholas Sanchez, who is a community historian. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
It's always nice to have you in, Captain. We know that you're very vocal, especially when it comes to Belizean history and a whole.
Yes.
And that's one of the things folks find very peculiar about you, that you know a lot and people listen when you speak. So what we want to know, especially for the start of this segment, is who is Captain Sanchez? Where did you get this wealth of knowledge?
Okay. Good morning, folks, and good morning, Belizeans all over the world. I don't use that other word.
Oh.
You don't know what the other word is, well, we won't even mention it.
Okay.
But I was born right here in Belize City quite a number of years ago. I'm in my 80s now.
Wow.
And right on the corner of Douglas Jones and North Front Street. I went to school in Belize City. I went to a number of schools in Belize City.
Okay.
And when I was 18 years old, I left the country and I wound up in Canada after traveling Central and South America. I wound up in Canada and I lived about 508 miles, as far as 508 miles away from the North Pole for a year.
Wow.
But I did 4 years in the Arctic. What happened is that my mom was born in Veracruz, Mexico, but she wanted to be buried in Orange Walk. And so when she passed in 1988, we brought her remains, we buried her in Orange Walk. And I came back to Belize City. I wouldn't come this far just for 2 or 3 days. So I stayed a couple of weeks. And I took a Belize City tour. They showed me the Baron Bliss tomb, the swing bridge, the courthouse, the government house, and St. John's Cathedral, and they said that was a Belize City tour. I wasn't very pleased with it. When I say I wasn't pleased, I wasn't upset, but I'm sure there's more to Belize City than
You
just
knew
these
there was
five.
more, yeah.
Yes. And so I promised that I would come back and do a proper Belize City tour, which I drove a bus from Canada to Belize in 1991.
Wow.
I took out 3 windows on each side, and when it says, have you got AC? Yep, 620. That's 6 windows gone and 20 miles an hour. You got the AC. And I started, but for the first 68 days, I only had 1 woman. The first morning I started, and I did 2 tours every day, 9 and 3. And people were laughing at me saying that either I'll go crazy or I'll go broke, but they weren't sure which one would happen first. Now, how do I get the history of Belize? When I was a youngster, I used to pass by the Jubilee Library, which was the year the Jubilee of King George V, the 2nd of December, 1935. And I would go in there as often as I could and look up the history of Belize. People are saying that they didn't teach them, they weren't taught Belize's history. Well, I just went in and looked up things, and the irony of it is that I remember so much, even though I was in Canada from 1953 right through until 90. And when I came back, I knew enough that I could start a city tour, and then I kept on asking and working with it. And if I hear something, I will remember it.
Now, you said when you did the Belize City tour, there were 3 areas that you were shown, 3 points of interest.
5.
5, okay. And when you came back, what were some of the things that you added on to that tour that you had known from your own research?
Well, first of all, I was born in Charles Crawford Douglas Jones Street, Colonial Secretary. As a matter of fact, the Burton Canal, where Mr. Russell Kemp used to drive us to Northern Lagoon, Burton Canal, Governor Sir John Elder Burton. And so John Elder Burton was the man who wrote the Baron Bliss will. He was the first executor. Douglas Jones was the secretary, colonial secretary. And then I found out who was the other guy, because there's supposed to be 3. Willoughby Bullock, he was the Attorney General. And but I started to dig up things and start looking for things, you know, like Albert Street, Queen Victoria's consort, husband, 1819 to 1861. Victoria Street. And I just start putting names to these streets and
and tying in the history of it.
Yes, and they said to me, well, if you're going down a real rough road as a street, what do you say to the people about the street? Well, I would find the history of the street, never mind the rough road. By the time we finished with the history of the street, who was Queen Victoria, born in 1819, ascended the throne of England 1837, died in January 1901. By the time I finished talking, we were off the rough road and we're on to something else.
So they don't
I'm
even
not paying
notice that,
attention
yeah.
to the, you see, I'm not paying attention. Like the guy says, do not pay attention to the noise in the market.
Yeah.
Come to a change.
So
And that's what I did.
let's jump into the conversation about Baron Bliss. And I think it's, you know, we all had our own history lessons within school
Yes.
to learn more about Baron Bliss or benefactor. And the day today, March 9th, used to be celebrated as Baron Bliss Day. It was changed to Heroes and Benefactors Day.
Let me just take that bone out of my throat for a moment there.
It bothers you that it's
Yes, it
changed.
does.
Tell me why.
Because, you see, Baron Bliss never asked us for anything. We treated him well, and he never took our kindness for stupidity. He respected us. He lived in the Bahamas for 5 years. Went down to Trinidad and Tobago. Eventually came to Belize on the 14th of January 1926 and died by the 9th of March, which is 55 days total. Yet, by the day after his 57th birthday, he called in Governor John Alder Burton, the Colonial Secretary, Douglas Jones. I will just use Douglas Jones so we can put it, get it together
As
with
the
the street,
street,
you
yeah.
know. And then the Attorney General Willoughby Bullock, and he made a new will, and he left us $1.8 million. Now, how do you go around and kick this guy out and bring in somebody else on top of his stuff? Now, I don't like that because I think it's being disrespectful. For instance, how many people realize that the land that our capital city sits on today, Belmopan, was bought with Baron Bliss Trust Fund money? Then to turn around and say, well, he doesn't matter. And I've been accosted by this, and I've been asked, why are you fighting this white man's agenda? Which I think is, you know, if not being just plain upstart, is ridiculous, you know.
Yeah.
But let me just give you a little rundown on who Baron Bliss was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Baron Henry Edward Ernest Victor Bliss was born in Marlow in the county of Buckingham, England in 1869, February 16th. 16th is his birthday. The 9th of March is the day he died. At the age of about 42, he got polio, and he never walked again because his limbs from the waist down was paralyzed.
Yeah.
But he had a boat, and it was towed about in England, and it was commandeered during World War I. But after that, he built the Sea King, got the Sea King 2 to be built. And that is the boat that he shipped over, and he lived in the Bahamas for 5 years on Hogs Island, setting up a water system and everything else. And then after 5 years, didn't like the social life, so he went down to Trinidad and Tobago, stayed there for some time, just a few months, then came back, and Willoughby Bullock, one of the same Attorney General, wrote him a letter and tell him, come to British Honduras, which now Belize. This is a wonderful place to be, the fishing is superb, and the people are wonderful. And he found it to be true. The fishing
So he
was
left
good.
Trinidad, came to Belize,
Yes,
and I
yes.
think one of the fascinating parts of the story that we get is talking about, and you pointed it just now, how little time he spent here to
Yes.
fall so much
55
in
days,
love and
yes.
decide to leave behind
Yes.
his wealth for Belize.
Yes. Except for a few things that they had to, you know, maybe a annuity for his wife and something here and there. And the British government took 480,000 pounds, dollars in death taxes. And then we had the rest. The rest still remains because we cannot touch the principal, only the interest.
Yes.
And what makes me like this guy so much is that every little detail was right there, that when you read it, doggone it, this guy left nothing out. That you seem to like the guy just because he was so meticulous, and you know.
Yeah.
So he spent most of his time on the coast in his boat.
Yes,
Did he
never
ever
came
set
ashore.
foot on Belize?
Never came ashore until his burial. He died on the 9th, and then his will said that he should be embalmed, and they buried him later. On the 17th of March, he was buried in the Bliss Park, what is now called Sanchez Park. That's a smaller bone in my craw, because I don't, you can't just be doing these things haphazardly, not knowing the real reasoning behind the way things are the way they are. And they buried him there, and then when the tomb was ready, it would have been he
wanted to be buried next to the lighthouse.
He wanted to be buried as near as possible to the sea, not less than 6 feet above high water mark. That's why the land there is raised, so that so that he can be he's not at low water mark. He's not less than, see, all these little things is written in the will, So how could you not like someone that is so meticulous in his work,
So he was captivated by this land and by our sea after 55 days.
Yes, before 55 days.
What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's just we were so, I think we kind of set him up, Because
what makes you say that?
Because when he was in the Bahamas, apparently every time he says, "Can you do this for me? How much are you going to pay? Can you do that? How much are you paying?" Well, every time he asked someone to do something, they want to know what was their benefit. And when he came to Belize, and then bring him a nice big fish, "Well, here, Baron, how much?" "Nothing, Baron, that's all right. Nothing, Baron, that's all right." Every time they did something for him, he said, "That's okay." We said, "That's okay." He said, "These are nice people." So I guess we set him up. And that's not a bad setup.
Or we showcased our hospitality from that
right.
long ago. Yeah.
You see, he never took our kind-heartedness for stupidity. He knew we were genuine. And that is a big difference, because he's looking at it from that angle.
What are some of the interesting facts that you have found out about Baron Bliss that perhaps we don't talk about as much anymore?
Well, first of all, he was a professional engineer. He designed the tomb and the grave. He asked that an obelisk or a lighthouse be put there to be 100 feet. And the detail, to be the granite should be bought from Aberdeen. I'm sure it's Scotland. Then we do other things with the money. We built the nurses training school, which I think is one of the most things we should look at, because if you have good health, and if you were born after 1962, more than likely you were trained in, the nurse that helped you to come into this world was trained in the Bliss Institute of Nursing. So that's good health. Library.
And that's at the that's in Belize City, the nursing school building. Because a lot of people don't know this. This is what I find, because we don't.
On St. Thomas Street.
On corner of St. Thomas, and I don't know the other street. St. Joseph.
St. Joseph.
Yes. All right. And of course, the building is still there.
Yes.
Now, we don't have a great history of passing on this information to people. Why was a nursing school built?
Well, what else do you need? First of all, you need good health and health care. So a nursing school would be the proper thing. There's only 3 things we are not allowed to build with it according to the will. Schools that connect to a church, because most of the schools in Belize were church schools. Okay, schools, churches, and dance halls.
Okay.
But if you're getting $1.5 million, you don't start to ask questions, why not? You just grab the money and says thank you, and you keep on going. And
the will stipulated how the money could be spent, and also that you wouldn't use the principal itself.
You cannot touch the principal. And contrary to popular belief, where on the 9th of March, these guys go out there on the boat and they're drinking up the whiskey with Baron Bliss Trust Fund money. Not so. There's only 100 pounds allotted for that. The way we do the money to do the prizes and so on, the Governor General or Governors General used to give a little bit extra. Mr. Joseph Waite is the financial secretary.
He manages
the government. The Governor General, the financial secretary, Joseph Waite, and the Attorney General, whoever he might be or she may be, is the 3 principal officers of the trust. Then you have space for 2 part-time auxiliary members. I don't know, I don't get any money for it, but I guess designated myself as one of the auxiliary because I'm the mouthpiece.
What do people say when you share all this history about who Baron Bliss is?
Well, some of them are amazed. I never heard that before. I didn't know that. Like I just mentioned, when they accosted me about the idea that I'm saying so much about him, that I was pushing his agenda, which I am not, but I am grateful for what has happened. My children know about Baron Bliss in Canada because I have spoken to them about it. And here, Belizeans don't know it, and they're right here.
Yeah.
And it distresses me because, the things that we should be doing, you have in Corozal, you have the city town hall in Benke, Cayo, town hall. You have libraries, markets, these different things you have. Even the first, not the first light plant in Orange Walk, but the first of the last set that come up to today in about 1950 or 51, I can't remember exactly what year, was just a little thing about this sitting on the floor right where the fire station is in Orange Walk. And that was Baron Bliss Trust Fund money.
As a matter of fact, the Punta Gorda Hospital
That's right.
was Baron Bliss Trust Fund.
You see, and we seem to, just throw out all these babies with the bath water, and that shouldn't be. We should have a little bit more respect because it doesn't reflect on the people. It reflects on all of us how we are treating a man so generous to us, and now to be honest with you, you see that. I'm not sure what that is on the floor because I don't see that well. That is where Baron Bliss, the effigy of Baron Bliss is in the Bliss. It's on the floor, in the back like that, on the floor, behind the stage. Now I think absolute disrespect. And I'm saying this because I don't like it, and I don't care who don't like me for saying so, but it's the truth. If I come on the radio or TV and I make a mistake, I will immediately try and render, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. But if it's the truth, come hell or high water, I'm sticking with it.
So for Captain Nicholas Sanchez, today should be celebrated as Baron Bliss Day.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you commemorate the day for this person that you have
I just
done
started.
so much research?
I just did. I just started by remembering. Today is my great grandson's birthday.
Okay.
He's 3 years old today, so that's part of my celebration also. But I always remember, I can look back, and I don't stumble. When I'm looking back, I don't stumble because I'm walking forward, because I kind of know where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
So I know where I'm going. And this is the tragedy with the way we treat our history and the way we treat ourselves, because we are our history, and we have to do this because it's the proper thing to do.
Well, we appreciate you stopping in and sharing this history with us. I think today, it's so fitting that it is March 9th and we're able to have this conversation at this time.
Yes.
We know you're very passionate about this topic, and we were able to hear that in this conversation today. So we appreciate you stopping in.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay.
We're going to go ahead now and take our break, and when we come back, we're going to be having a conversation with the Belize Sailing Association. So stay tuned.